Dr. Mara Voss did not look like a threat. She was 26 years old, small, and quiet, the kind of person who apologized to chairs when she bumped into them. She owned 3 cardigans and wore them in a rotation so precise that her colleagues could tell what day of the week it was by the color she had on. She brought the same lunch every single day to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, half a turkey sandwich and a bottle of water with a rubber band around the cap so nobody would accidentally drink it. And she had done this for 4 years without variation, without complaint, without any apparent awareness that this was something other people might find strange. Her dissertation committee called her the most remarkable mind they had encountered across a combined 83 years of academic life. The FBI had a different word for her. Her file had started small, the way most things that become enormous start, quietly, in a database, triggered by a keyword algorithm that was designed to catch patterns rather than people. She had searched certain terms during her senior thesis: propulsion tolerances, near-orbit structural decay, material degradation coefficients in low-gravity environments. These were normal terms. Every aerospace engineering student touched them eventually. But Mara had not touched them the way other students did. She had moved through them at a velocity the algorithm recognized as wrong. Not wrong like fraud, not wrong like espionage, but wrong like watching someone who claims they have never played a piece of music sit down at a piano and perform it from memory without a single hesitation. She didn't learn these fields. She arrived in them already oriented, already asking the questions that took other researchers years of foundational work to even locate. The flag the algorithm raised was not criminal. It was the bureaucratic equivalent of a raised eyebrow. The file was labeled anomalous academic trajectory and filed in a folder that human eyes rarely visited. Then, she graduated summa cum laude with a perfect grade point average and submitted a thesis that was classified within 72 hours of its submission. Not recommended for classification. Not flagged for secondary review. Classified by offices that did not advertise their connection to MIT. Mara found out when she tried to log in to correct a typo she had noticed at 3 in the morning. The access denied screen stared at her. She stared back for a long time. Then, she went to her kitchen, made tea, and sat at the table in the particular stillness she adopted when a problem was forming in the deep water of her mind and needed space to surface. 3 hours later, she had reconstructed the entire thesis from memory. She added 4 improvements she had thought of since submission. She posted it to an open academic forum under a pseudonym she invented in less than a minute. The forum post was removed in 9 minutes. A second flag appeared in her database file. The folder was upgraded from anomalous academic trajectory to active monitoring. A junior analyst named Derek Cho, recently assigned to the Boston field office from a previous posting in Ohio, was told to keep a quiet watch on her. Derek was 24. He had joined the bureau because he wanted interesting work. He had not expected interesting to feel like this, like watching a small woman in a cardigan eat the same sandwich every day while doing things that made the senior analyst go quiet when they read his weekly summaries. His first report was 3 pages long. The relevant section read, "Subject has applied for a postdoctoral position at the Goddard Space Flight Center. The posting requires a PhD in aerospace or mechanical engineering, a minimum of 5 years of field-relevant professional experience, and demonstrated familiarity with current propulsion architecture. Subject satisfies the doctoral requirement. She has no professional experience." In lieu of a cover letter, she submitted a 40-page unsolicited redesign of Goddard's existing propulsion framework that identified 11 structural inefficiencies and proposed a fuel consumption reduction of 38% on long-range missions. The appendix alone is longer than most applicants' full submissions. Derek had added a handwritten note at the bottom of the printed copy he kept on his own desk. "She's going to get the job, isn't she?" She got the job. Mara arrived at Goddard on a Tuesday in late October with a rolling suitcase, her 3 cardigans, and a small potted cactus she had named Gerald. She found her desk, introduced herself to the people nearby in a voice that required them to lean in slightly, and sat down. She opened her laptop. By Thursday of the same week, she had identified a critical flaw in the thermal shielding specifications for an upcoming Mars resupply mission, a flaw that would have resulted in complete payload failure at re-entry if not corrected. She documented it in a 2-paragraph email. She apologized in the email for any inconvenience her findings might cause. She copied her supervisor on it. Her supervisor read the first paragraph, felt the math in the second paragraph producing a low-grade vertigo behind his eyes, forwarded it upward without comment. It landed on the desk of Dr. Patience Aquim, senior mission architect, 22 years at Goddard, a woman with the settled professional confidence of someone who had been right about large and consequential things for a very long time. Dr. Aquim read the email once, read it again, put it face down on her desk, picked it back up. Then, she took the elevator down 3 floors, badged through 2 security checkpoints, and walked into the open workspace where Mara was sitting eating half a turkey sandwich, water bottle rubber-banded. Gerald tilted 4 degrees toward the window. "Walk me through it," Dr. Aquim said. "The thermal issue?" Mara put down the sandwich. "From the point where you found the divergence." Mara stood up. She walked to the whiteboard on the far wall. She picked up a marker. She apologized once for the amount of space she was about to use. Then, she talked for 40 minutes without stopping, drawing as she went, the notation dense and precise, and, to anyone watching who had the background to follow it, quietly extraordinary. Dr. Aquim did not speak for the first 32 minutes. Then, "How long have you been working in aerospace?" Mara considered the question seriously. "Professionally? 8 days." A silence that had weight. "I've been interested since I was 4, Mara added helpfully. Dr. Aquim looked at the whiteboard, looked at Mara, looked back at the whiteboard. "Do not mention any of this to anyone outside this building," she said, and walked back upstairs with the measured pace of a woman processing something she did not yet have a category for. The 4th flag was added to Mara's file within the hour. Derek, tracking flags from his downtown Boston office, read the update and pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. He was building a picture. The problem was that the picture kept growing without resolving. It was not criminal strange. It was not espionage strange. It was the third kind of strange, the kind that made you sit back in your chair and look at the ceiling and recalibrate what you thought you understood about how smart a person could be and how fast they could move and what that meant for everything you'd assumed was fixed. He requested a meeting with his supervisor. Agent Carolyn Marsh had been in the Bureau for 19 years. Her previous cases included 4 sitting senators, 2 confirmed foreign intelligence assets, and a Nevada man who had built a working particle accelerator in a garage using components sourced entirely from agricultural equipment catalogs. She did not frighten easily, and she did not reach conclusions ahead of her evidence. Derek laid the Mara Voss file on her desk and walked her through it. Agent Marsh was quiet for a long time after he finished. "She's not selling anything," Derek said. "No unusual transactions. No foreign contacts. No communication with any flag network. She's not leaking. She's not being run by anyone." He paused. "She's just what?" Derek looked at the ceiling. "Really genuinely good." Agent Marsh tapped the file with her index finger. "Nobody gets this good this fast without a source. There is always a source, a minter, a text, an institution, a transmission. Something." She pushed the file back across the desk. "Find the source." Derek went back to his desk. He looked at her photo, faculty ID from MIT, cardigan, hair slightly uneven on the left side like she cut it herself in a bathroom mirror, an expression of polite uncertainty. He thought about the whiteboard session Dr. Aquim had described in the incident report she filed 2 days after it happened, when she had finally found the words. He thought about the fact that the Earth had been broadcasting radio signals into space for 100 years. That those signals traveled outward in an expanding sphere carrying content and technology and biology and civilization. That a sufficiently advanced intelligence, receiving those signals, would not need to be told how humans worked. It would figure it out. He opened a new field in his notes. He labeled it working theory. He typed 8 sentences. He deleted them. He sat in the dark for a moment. He retyped them. Working theory, the note said. She is not concealing what she knows. She does not know that what she knows is not normal. She has no frame of reference for what normal looks like from the outside because she has only ever been inside her own mind. The source of her knowledge is not a mentor or a text. The source is prior. The source is whatever she was before she was Dr. Mara Voss of MIT, 3 cardigans, 1 cactus, half a sandwich, rubber band on the water bottle, 8 days in aerospace, 40-page unsolicited redesign. He saved the note. He looked at it for a long time. Then, he added one more line. The question is not what she knows. The question is whether she knows what she is. 3 weeks later, Mara won the Goddard Internal Innovation Award for the thermal shielding correction. The award came with a small glass trophy and a gift card to a local restaurant. She put the trophy on her desk next to Gerald. She gave the gift card to the security guard on the night shift because she had noticed he always brought a thermos from home, and she thought maybe he would enjoy a proper meal out. The security guard mentioned this to his supervisor. His supervisor mentioned it to Derek's contact at Goddard. Derek read the report and sat very still for a minute. He added a note to the file. She is either the most sophisticated cover identity ever constructed, so deep that even her small daily kindnesses are performance, or she is exactly what she appears to be on the surface, which is a person who is genuinely, uncomplicatedly good, and who happens to also be capable of things that should not be possible. He thought about which of those two options was more frightening. He thought about it for a long time. He could not decide. Above him, in the architecture of agencies and oversight that he could only partially see, things were beginning to move. Files were being consolidated. Analysts who had never spoken to each other were being introduced in rooms that did not appear on building directories. A woman named Director Selenakar, who ran a program so classified that its existence was a rumor even inside the intelligence community, had read the Mara Voss file in its entirety 3 times, and was now reading it a 4th time on a flight she was not supposed to be on to a meeting that was not on any calendar. She had a doctorate in theoretical physics that she had never used professionally. She had spent 10 years building a program designed for exactly this kind of situation. She had hoped, professionally, that the program would never need to be used. She had known, quietly, that it would. She read Derek Cho's working theory on the 4th pass and did not dismiss it. She folded the page over. She looked out the window at the dark air above the cloud cover, the thin atmosphere, the beginning of space just above that thin line, the immensity beyond it. She thought about Mara Voss eating half a turkey sandwich next to a slightly tilted cactus named Gerald. She thought about what it meant to be something the world did not have a category for yet. She thought about all the ways that had gone wrong before. She thought about how to make sure this time it didn't. The plane began its descent. Director Akar closed the file. She thought about the right words for a situation that had no precedent. She thought about the difference between a conversation and an interrogation, and the difference between those two things and an introduction. She thought about what you said to someone when you needed them to understand that being found was not the same as being caught. She thought about this for the rest of the descent, through the landing, through the terminal, all the way to the car that was waiting for her at the curb. She still did not have it exactly right, but she was close. She could feel close the way you feel weather changing, not seeing it yet, not able to name the specific hour it would arrive, but certain of the pressure shifting in the air, certain that something had been building toward this moment for a long time, certain that the moment was almost here. The meeting happened on a Wednesday, in a coffee shop in Georgetown that smelled like cardamom and warm wood, with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu and a gray cat on the windowsill that judged everyone who walked through the door and found them wanting. Director Selenakar had chosen it deliberately, not for the coffee, which was fine but not remarkable, for the atmosphere, the kind of place where honesty felt natural, where the furniture was too old and too comfortable for anyone to maintain a performance for long. She had been in enough sterile conference rooms with enough people who needed to not feel like they were being processed. She knew the difference a room could make. She was already seated when Mara Voss walked in. Blue cardigan, canvas bag over one shoulder, a small potted cactus visible through the open flap of the bag. Mara scanned the coffee shop with the focused, methodical gaze of someone who was actually looking at what they were looking at rather than performing the social gesture of arrival, found Director Akar at the corner table, walked over, and sat down without being asked. "You wanted to talk about the notebook," Mara said. Director Akar had not mentioned any notebook in the message that had found its way to Mara through 3 non-consecutive channels over the course of a week. The message had said only, "I would like to meet. This is not an arrest or an investigation. It is a conversation I have been waiting to have for some time. Please bring whatever you are currently working on." "I did," Director Akar said. Mara looked at her for a moment with the direct, undefensive quality of a person who had never learned to be cagey because she had never needed to protect things by obscuring them. Then, she reached into her bag, past the cactus, and placed a spiral-bound notebook on the table. Gas station brand. Cover slightly warped. She had bought it the morning she filled it because she had forgotten to bring her usual notebook, and the work had arrived without warning, the way the best work always did. Director Akar did not reach for it. "Do you know what you wrote?" she said. "Yes." "Do you know what it means for everything that comes after it?" Mara thought about this with the kind of thoroughness that other people reserved for questions that actually required it. It means the foundational assumption is wrong, she said. Not the math built on top of it, the assumption underneath all of it, the starting point. The way we think about moving through space is like trying to climb a river by walking against the current. It works, partially, expensively, with enormous effort and enormous loss. The notebook is about reading the shape of the water instead. Silence. Outside, traffic moved along the street in ordinary Thursday morning rhythms. How long have you been developing this? Director Akar said. The math? Since I was 19. I read a paper on the Alcubierre Drive on a commuter bus and felt something. I don't have a better word for it than felt. Felt that the paper was solving for the wrong variable. That the problem was being framed incorrectly at its base. I have been working on the correct framing since that day. Mara paused. 7 years. And before 19. Mara looked at her carefully. Before the bus. Before MIT. Before aerospace became the word you used for what your mind was already doing. Director Akar said the Alcubierre referenced the way she'd said it deliberately, with a precision that meant she had read the file and was not pretending otherwise. Where did the orientation come from? Not the knowledge. The direction. The instinct for where to look. A long pause. Outside the window, the gray cat redistributed itself and resumed its low opinion of foot traffic. I don't know, Mara said. Then, with the precision she brought to everything she was genuinely uncertain about, I've thought about it. I know that my rate of comprehension for certain subjects is not standard. I've always been aware of that, at least since I was old enough to have a comparison point. I assumed it was just aptitude, talent. Some people are faster. She looked at her hands on the table. But sometimes I think about why certain things feel like memory rather than learning, and I don't have an answer that satisfies me. Director Akar said nothing. I've never said that to anyone, Mara said. I know. Director Akar opened the notebook to the first page. The work began immediately. No title, no working notes, no false starts. Just the math, fully formed, at the place where a mind that had already completed the thinking put pen to paper to record what it had found. My analysts have been watching your file for 2 years. In 2 years, they have not found a teacher, a text, a program, a transmission, an institution, or a moment of acquisition. What they found instead is a record that begins at its own conclusion, which means either someone has built the most complete and sophisticated background identity ever constructed. She looked up from the notebook. Or you are exactly what you appear to be. A person who knows things at a depth and rate that the usual explanations do not cover. Mara was quiet. I am not here to accuse you of anything, Director Akar said. She said it cleanly, without softening it into mush. You are not in danger. You have not done anything wrong. I am here because the notebook you have placed on this table between us is, if it holds, and I have seen enough of it to believe it holds, the most significant scientific document produced in the last 50 years, possibly longer. It does not improve how we travel in space. It makes every method we currently use irrelevant. That is a step change of a kind that has only happened a few times in recorded history, and every time it happened, the person at the center of it was handled badly, and the outcome for everyone, including that person, was a loss. Mara looked at the notebook on the table. I am trying to make sure that does not happen this time, Director Akar said. The barista at the counter called out a name. Someone scraped a chair back. The cat jumped from the window to the floor with the silent authority of an animal that went exactly where it decided to go and expected the floor to be grateful for the visit. What does handled badly look like? Mara said. Director Akar turned a few pages of the notebook, unhurried. Classification without consent. Isolation framed as protection. Institutional seizure of work paired with personal access restrictions framed as security protocol. A person who produces something transformative being absorbed by the machinery built to manage transformation rather than enabled to continue being the thing that produced it. She closed the notebook and placed it back on the table directly in front of Mara. Returned, not retained. It looks like taking something rare and grinding it into something that fits the org chart. Mara looked at the notebook. Then, at Director Akar. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what I know before I ask you anything. Mara picked up the notebook and held it in both hands, not opening it. What are you going to ask me? 2 things. Director Akar picked up her coffee cup. First, whether you are willing to work within a structure that I will build around you rather than on top of you. A team with the clearance and the competence to support what you are doing. Resources that don't come with seizure clauses. Room to finish what you've started without the next 40 years of it being managed by people who understand it less than you do. She set the cup down. Second, whether you are willing to answer some questions, including the hard ones. Mara looked at her steadily. What hard questions? The ones that ask whether you are entirely certain about the nature of what you are. The coffee shop was warm and quiet. Steam moved above the cups. The cat sat in the middle of the floor and cleaned its face with one paw with the focused, complete engagement of a creature that had no anxieties about what it was. Mara looked at the cat for a moment. Then, she looked at Director Akar. I think about that sometimes, she said. I don't have an answer. I know. If you had a clean answer, I would be less interested in the conversation. Director Akar's voice was level and direct in the way of a person who respected people enough to give them the unvarnished version. Here is what I believe. I believe you are human. I believe you may also be something in addition to that, or something beyond the current vocabulary for it, or something that the categories we have built over centuries of trying to understand ourselves simply do not account for yet. I believe those things are not contradictions. I believe the honest position is that we do not know, and that not knowing is not the same as something being wrong. She paused. I believe the work in that notebook matters more than the question of what you are, and also that the question of what you are matters enormously, and that the two things need to be held at the same time without letting one swallow the other. Mara was quiet for a long time. Across the city, in the fourth floor of a building that didn't appear in any public registry, Derek Cho was staring at the passive monitoring report on his screen that indicated Mara had left her apartment at 8:42 in the morning carrying her canvas bag and the cactus. He had been watching the meeting location on a satellite image feed with no audio, no visual inside the building, nothing except the fact of the location and the knowledge of who was in it and what was at stake. Agent Marsh was standing behind him with a coffee she wasn't drinking. Neither of them spoke for a while. What do you think she says? Derek said eventually. Marsh looked at the building on the screen, an unremarkable Georgetown block, people moving along the sidewalk in ordinary morning patterns, nothing externally indicating that something was happening inside that had no real precedent. I think she says yes, Marsh said. To working with Akar? To all of it. Marsh set down the coffee. Because I think she's been waiting for someone to finally ask her the real question. Not what she knows. Not how she knows it. Not what threat she represents. She looked at the screen. Whether she knows what she is. Derek looked at the building. He thought about the file he had been building for 2 years, page by page, flag by flag, the picture growing without resolving. He thought about his working theory, the one he had typed and deleted and retyped at his desk in the dark. He thought about what it meant to spend your whole life knowing you understood things at a rate and depth that didn't match anyone around you, and having no framework for why, and carrying that weight in 3 cardigans, and a cactus named Gerald, and half a turkey sandwich with a rubber band on the water bottle. He thought about what it must feel like to finally sit across from someone who had done the work of understanding you before they opened their mouth. Inside the coffee shop, Mara Voss placed the notebook back on the table between herself and Director Akar. She put both hands flat on it, the way you put your hands on something you are not releasing but are allowing to be seen. I want one condition, she said. Director Akar waited. Gerald comes to the facility. A small pause. The cactus. He has a lean developing, and I need to be able to monitor it. Director Akar looked at her for a moment. Then, something shifted in her expression, not a smile exactly, but the thing that happened underneath a smile, the internal recognition of something real that didn't need to be performed. That's not a problem, she said. Then yes, Mara said. To all of it. Director Akar nodded once. She reached across the table and opened the notebook to a page near the middle, the one where Mara's handwriting had gotten slightly larger in the way it did when the thinking was moving faster than the pen. She studied it for a moment. Then, she looked up. Walk me through where this section starts, she said. From the first assumption. And Mara did. She talked for a long time. She used a paper napkin when she ran out of notebook margin. She apologized once for how much napkin she was using. The cat came over and sat under her chair at some point, which it had not done for any other customer that morning, and regarded the napkin mathematics with the specific, focused attention of a creature that was either deeply engaged or entirely indifferent, and it was impossible from the outside to tell which. Director Akar did not interrupt. She listened the way she had trained herself to listen, completely, without pre-building her response, without steering, without the small bureaucratic impulse to convert what she was hearing into categories she already had. She listened as if she was being trusted with something irreplaceable, because she was. Outside, the city moved in ordinary patterns. People walked dogs. Buses stopped at corners. The sky was the flat, silver gray of a November morning, the kind of sky that didn't commit to anything. Inside, the most important conversation of the decade was happening over mediocre coffee and a napkin, in a voice so quiet you had to lean in to hear it, between a woman who ran a program that didn't officially exist and a woman who might not be exactly what anyone had a word for yet. And in a fourth-floor office across the city, Derek Cho looked at his working theory one more time. The question he had typed and deleted and retyped in the dark, the one he had never shared with anyone because it sounded too much like a thing you only said in a film. The question is not what she knows. The question is whether she knows what she is. He looked at it for a long time. Then, he added one final line. The thing he had been working toward for 2 years without knowing it. The thing the whole file had always been moving toward from the first keyword flag in the database to this moment. We found out at the same time she did. He saved the file. He picked up his coffee. It had gone cold, but he drank it anyway, because sometimes you were so absorbed in a thing that you forgot to attend to the small, ordinary details of your own life. And that was all right. That was human. He thought about whether that last thought applied to everyone in the Georgetown coffee shop. He decided he didn't need the answer today. Today was enough.